welcome back once again to Red Hot Talk episode 39. And we have Rod Lawton and myself, Jimmy Cheng, right here. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, more specifically, lenses. As you can see from the thumbnail that I have listed today, is about your favorite lens and our favorite lenses. And we would like to hear from you, all of you, what lenses are your favorite. You know, it can be in the past, it can be current, it can be anything. You know, just let us know in the comment sections and the chat room here what lenses that kind of make you remember or make you passionate, make you fond with photography. It can be any reasons, and we're going to share ours in a minute. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about photography show, because we are Rod, you're going to a photography show, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm going to be there on the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Right, I'm going to be on Saturday and Sunday. So if any of you are in the UK, are heading over to TPS, please look out for us. We might be walking around with a mic and trying to interview people, so you never know. And please do, if you do see us, please come over and say hi to us, and we'll be more than happy to have a chat with you guys. And so this is the advertisement for TPS. And if you haven't booked a ticket, it's already on sale online or register. I think you can still get it for free, apparently, if you register early. And so that will be quite cool, and looking forward to see all of you there. So let's go to our topic of the day, lenses. So Rod, let's start with you, of course. You have some lenses that you are very fond with, and tell us a few, and also the reason why these are your choices.
So first of all, I've got to apologize to Jimmy. He said, Rod, can you send me photos from 3 of your favorite lenses? So I sent in 10. So that wasn't a good start, so I apologize about that. So I do have quite a long list of lenses that I like and have really liked. So I don't know whether you were going to tee any images up, Jimmy, or whether you just wanted me to talk for a while.
I'm just going to start one off now, and there you go.
Oh, that one, yeah. Okay. So first of all, apologies. This is not an OM lens. This was a Fujinon 23mm f2. So that's a 35mm equivalent. I was on holiday in Venice a few years ago. Lucky me. And we were staying in a district where we were just a little outside the center. So we'd walk in through this district. It's in November, so it got dark early. And here I was with a camera with no image stabilization. It's a Fujifilm X-T20, so it's all a bit marginal and quite high ISO and what have you. But I just love this lens because it's small, it's compact, it's got an aperture ring, so you can just quickly turn it to f2, which obviously was where it stayed this evening. And it's quite sharp, it's pretty good at f2, and it's just a lovely little lens. And I think this is one of those cases where you associate a lens or a camera with a particular event or a time, and you get some nice shots, and it really kind of, everything comes together.
Yeah,
and
I guess
after this, I've thought highly of this lens.
Yeah, I get this lens kind of reminded me in terms of size. It reminds me of these 1.8 primes on the Olympus line.
Yeah.
It's just very tiny and small.
It is, yeah. I would say it's probably. It's a little larger than the Olympus 17 f1.8, but not a lot. It's quite similar.
That's interesting to see, because when I looked at Fuji's lineup now, a majority of them are actually growing in size. they're not as small anymore.
So there are some newer 1.4 lenses, and you might think, well, it's a 1.4 versus an f2, it's going to be half as big again, maybe twice the size. They're actually 3 times the size. It's quite disappointing.
Yeah.
So I think in the same way that OM system has kind of moved away from those little primes we so love, Fujifilm has done the same. It's got a little group of f2 primes, which I think are amongst the best lenses.
I really wonder why, because if I switch back to our interview room here, just want to show. So this is one of my favorite Olympus lenses. This is the 17 1.8. So this is a tiny lens, full metal, you know, it's just a perfect balance on the smaller body, like the EM5 or the pen. And this is just like a almost you can just slap on it and just leave it there. It's just like a point and shoot camera, and
Yeah.
it's that good. I mean, I like it. We've got the manual clutch as well, which is not very common in the smaller 1.8 Prime series because all of them just are plastic. So this is the only kind of metal one that has a manual clutch on it, and I wonder whether they didn't like kind of update the rest of the range. Like let's say make a Mark II version has a manual clutch, metal bit. I don't mind it charging a little bit more. Maybe make it weather seal as well, and keep the same optical formula and the size. Maybe just a tad bigger for the weather sealness and things like that. But yeah, that will be something that I will be looking forward to see.
Yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. It's very sad. It would be lovely if the 12 millimeter and the 45 and
That's a
the
12.
25 were exactly the same. Has that
Yeah,
got a focus clutch?
yes, this one has the focus clutch as well. This is the
Right.
12. Yeah, so
Yes,
that one has it as well.
it's expensive though, isn't it? Don't you think it's quite expensive? It
This
seems
is
to have got more expensive.
has it? I'm not entirely sure, but I know
I
it's
six
the most
six
expensive
hundred.
out of the bunch. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And but I think that all the wide angle tends to the wider it goes, the more expensive it gets. I think that tends
yeah.
to happen.
So I think with that particular shot, if I'd been there today, I would have taken my EP7 or EM13 just for the stabilization because that was an issue. A camera with no IBIS, even at f2, even though the Fujifilm X-T20 was all right at high ISOs, that was probably around ISO 3200, which probably as high as you want to go. So it's a little bit marginal. So I think today I'd probably shoot on MFT just because of the stabilization. But I guess newer Fujifilms have got IBIS. So if I go back, I don't know. What shall I do? I don't know.
Well,
but
like
no,
just for those who might be wondering, I just recently tested the XT5, and that one's obviously got the latest IBIS for the system. I actually find it not as good as I was hoping to see. For static still shots is okay, but since
yeah,
you start to move around, pan around, or maybe just just do some random movement yourself as a photographer, and let's say you're trying to chase something and just walking and trying to snap a shot, I find that is not as stable as MFT. And it's definitely very similar to full frame, which is not great in
yeah.
any way.
I haven't tried the XT5. Well done for getting hold of one of those. I've been thinking about that quite hard. But I did use the
Watch my review.
I did use an XS10 for a while, which had IBIS, and I found, and I don't know whether you found this, for stills it's all right.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it's quite as good as MFT, but I think a lot of this is because it's just a bigger sensor
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
harder to stabilize. And I think you see the same thing when you move up to full frame.
Yeah.
But I thought for static shots it was fine, but the minute you start moving around and start doing any filming, it just gets in a mess because
It is, yes.
it stabilizes a little bit, then it has to stop and reset. And I find you kind of get this jerky movement where you'd rather you'd left it switched off and just put the thing on a gimbal, really, because it seems to struggle with large
Yeah.
movements
Yeah, I mean, and
and
also another
deliberate
thing that
movements.
I did notice of the XT5 is especially for that new 40 megapixel APS-C sensor is the readout speed is quite slow.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that means that if you switch off mechanical shutter, just use electronic shutter, and if you pan around, you will see like rolling shutter very, very badly. So like if you're really planning to use the camera for any sort of action, so you really have to use mechanical and not electronic. And filming, especially in filming, you really can see it, and so it's not the greatest for filming at all. So I wouldn't really
no.
want to use it for anything serious in that case.
I mean, I did watch a video review of the X106,
Yep.
and that looked fine. Actually, I think that might be Robin if he's here today. I think I was
Right.
watching his video, but anyway, whoever's video I was watching took a shot, hit the playback button, and it's like a second for it to load the image. And I thought, that's not quick. In 2024, it
Yep.
should be a bit quicker than that. So I think 40 megapixels, it's nice to think of, but it has its practical limitations as well, I think.
Mm.
Interesting. I'll let me know when you post your review, Jimmy. I'll certainly watch that.
That is coming this Friday.
Is it? I'll
Yes.
put it on my
Um,
calendar.
but anyway, let's go back to the lenses.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this one, I think your title is in Hasselblad, I think.
That's right. Yes. So this was a Hasselblad XCD 21 millimeter f4, which I think is probably equivalent to about 16 millimeters in full frame. So what a number of things and see things differently. I think lenses can do that too. So I've shot with lenses this wide before, but this is very, very sharp lens. So
Right.
you trust it completely to be sharp right into the corners. And the other thing was, because it's a Hasselblad, they're not
Yep.
quick. So it makes you slow down and do things very deliberately and carefully. And
Yep.
I think if you're trying to produce very tight, careful compositions, that's
Mm.
a good thing. Because otherwise you take 100 shots, which aren't very good, when really you should be taking a lot longer on the one or two shots that are. But basically, I love this lens because it's so good. One of the things that it always bothers me about mediocre lenses is I try not to pixel peep, but you do like them to be sharp right into the corners. Well, I do anyway. And if they're not, it starts to make me a little bit twitchy. Even if it doesn't affect the quality of the picture, you somehow think, oh,
Didn't we just recently talk about sharpness isn't everything?
I know, I know, I know. But I think in photography,
Yeah.
if something is deliberate, it's fine. So I've got a Lens Baby Trio set of lenses on a turret that you rotate. So there's a velvet, there's a sweet, and there's a twist,
Yeah.
and they are of course blurred in the corners,
Mm.
which is fine because that's deliberate.
Yep.
But if you want a shot where you haven't got deliberate blur, it starts to look like a mistake, I think. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But for something like this, I think you do need it to be sharp everywhere. It's like a kind of Ansel Adams mindset, isn't it? Where technical quality is everything.
Mm. Okay, I have something to say about that later, but then it.
Yeah, yeah, no. I think as well. I'm probably going to agree with what you say, but in this particular instance, with this particular subject,
Sure.
I just liked what it did.
But I guess, like also depending on the genre of photography in as well. The landscape, for instance, I think sharpness is definitely can make a difference in terms of ultimate presentations.
Yeah.
Especially those shots that you may want to have everything, all the details being displayed in the frame, and then you really want a sharp lens that it can resolve all the details.
It depends on your audience as well, doesn't it? And who you're aiming at.
Yeah.
But I don't want to anticipate what you're going to say later about sharpness, but I've also, one of my other favorite lenses was the Sigma 8-16 on APS-C, and that is not sharp in the corners, but I still love that lens as well. So let's move on.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next one. Right.
Okay.
I like this image actually. This is
okay.
I think this is a Nikon 24-120.
That's right. Yes, I was lucky enough to go to Iceland, and I think when you go somewhere you've not been before and you don't quite know what to expect,
Yep.
you do need to be able to adapt. So the 24-120, and I do own one of these lenses too. They're a bit big, but they let you adapt to whatever circumstances you find yourself in. And I look at this. This was shot at 24 millimeters. I think I was dodging the waves. I think I wanted the sand to be wet and silvery. So what I had to do, so I was at 24 millimeters, so quite close, had to wait for a wave to come in, run right up to it just as I thought it was stopping, then kind of chase it back out into the sea and get the shot, then run away again. I mean, a braver photographer than me would have had Wellingtons on when it just stuck their tripod in the sand, but
Yeah, yeah.
I guess you know, you don't always have the stuff you need at the time. But I think with this one as well, I think with hindsight, those rock stacks on the skyline, I could have gone right into 120 millimeters and made an
Yeah,
even better shot out of those.
yeah.
So, whereas normally I don't like long zoom range lenses because I think they're quite compromised, I think
Mm,
they're really useful when you just don't know what you're going to see
yeah.
or where you're going to be able to shoot it from.
So that's the argument that for our next chat is about zoom or prime. But
uh,
looks like there are more
yeah,
people
yeah.
joining now. Let's remind
Okay,
everybody's
okay,
question that we would like to hear from you is your all-time favorite lenses, and give us some reasons as
yeah.
well, and because we're gonna come back to your comments and start talking about them in a minute. At the moment, Rod is showing his favorite lenses, and he's got a long list apparently, so we're gonna hear from him
It's not that
exactly.
long. We're halfway through. We're halfway through.
So
What
let's see what else he has.
what I would say about this particular lens is this 24 to 120 f4. It is absolutely not my favorite when I have to carry it around. It's my
All because of
favorite for
size
what
and
it can
weight,
do. It's just a monster. I mean,
right?
I'm not a fan of big lenses, but in its defense, I would say that compared to modern mirrorless lenses, it's not that big, but it's big enough.
That is interesting because
Yeah,
Rod and I just had a conversation saying that even though like full frame DSLR lenses were big, you know, considering
yeah.
you know, back in the days, but now and the mirrorless, which is supposed to be smaller, but in fact they've gone the other way. They've gone bigger and heavier, and I mean we're not even talking about prices, but you know they just gone big and heavy.
Well, this is an exception, which is why I really like it. This is the Nickel Z 24 to 70 f4. Now, I know there's an f2.8, which is twice the size, but I think this f4 lens that came out at the same time as the Z6 and Z7
Mm.
is the best standard lens for these cameras. I mean, I can live with f4 rather than f2.8 because the body has stabilization in it. That's fine. It's just a really nice compact lens for a full frame standard zoom.
Mm.
I even though I think optically I would say they're not dissimilar, this and the f2.8, but this f4 lens is just so much nicer to use and carry around. And it seems to me that this is what mirrorless lenses were supposed to be like. They were supposed to be compact. I mean, this was part of the sale for mirrorless cameras, wasn't it?
Mm.
Everything could be smaller, right? So
Yeah,
this is one
yeah,
of the few
essentially, yeah,
cases. I think this is one of the few cases where a mirrorless lens has
yeah,
been made smaller than it would have been.
yeah.
So the Nikon Z 24 to 70 f4, I think is a great lens,
Right.
underrated.
Okay, I'm gonna have a look now. Right, the next one you have is an OM system lens,
Okay,
which is the A225 f4.
that's right. That's right. When I got this delivered for review, I thought this is ridiculous. It's way too big. It's way too big. Um, but what this lens can do is just amazing. I think in two respects. First of all, optically, I think it is unexpectedly good. It is very sharp lens at any focal length. But also, what it enables you to do, because you can walk around. This is an old lighthouse near where I live.
Yep.
You can walk around and you can get dramatically different perspectives with just the one lens. So obviously for this one, I was right up close at 8 millimeters. That's 16 millimeters equivalent.
Yep.
But this lens goes to a 50 millimeter equivalent too. So I could have stepped right back and got a completely different composition
Mm.
at the longer end of the focal range. So despite its size, I think this is just a marvelous lens for anyone who likes kind of travel and architectural and just generally found photography, where you're not quite sure what you're going to see, and you want a choice of, you want to keep your options open about how you photograph it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really like the 8 to 25 for that reason. It's compromised. I mean, it's only an f4 and it's a big lens, but I think for its versatility and also its image quality are really very, very good.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I love using the 8025 F4 Pro for my travel. For simple fact
Mm,
that, like you said, sometimes if you just want to walk around lens, and I know we could have used. I mean, I could have used the 12 to 40 or 45 zoom lens, standard zoom, but I think the 8 to 25 actually more useful in many cases is because that ultra wide end is certainly very appealing, especially when you
yeah,
come to a place where where there's a lot of details that you would like to capture, and with the,
yeah,
where the 12 simply can't. That happens a lot in travel because you go to a
yeah,
museum, for
yeah,
instance. If you go to cathedrals, you want to look up the ceiling, you want to just capture you don't want to
yeah,
suck everything into that one frame. You will find that 12 is quite tight, and the 8 will definitely get
yeah,
you there. I find it really, really good. And that range it has, which is 8 to 25, so the equivalent full frame is 16 to 50, then 50 is a standard lens. So, you can actually get that range there, which is very, very useful. And to me, I think it's definitely more useful than the 12 to 40 or 45 in that case. The standard lens is good if let's say, if I just heading out for with family, and would just want to just general photograph with the groups, or sometimes individual kids running around, and 40 will give me that kind of flexibility there, just to highlight a person, maybe just do a little bit of a half-length portrait, and that will be quite good. But yeah, the 8 to 25 I think is definitely phenomenal in that sense. And yeah, even though it's a little bit big, but it's still lighter than a 2.8 version.
yeah. I mean, what I found when I was traveling was I was constantly swapping
Yeah,
between a regular standard zoom and a wide angle. And with this, because I don't often shoot anything much longer than 50,
yeah,
this I have much less lens swapping because it can do both jobs. It can do the wide stuff and it can do the regular stuff. So although I don't like it as a physical thing particularly,
mm,
for what it does is it is definitely one of my favorites.
interesting, interesting. And the next lens is also OM system, which is also one of my favorite, which is the 40 to
Yeah.
150 f4 Pro.
So Jimmy, tell me if you disagree. I don't know whether you do a lot of car photography, but car photography is a lot like portrait photography.
Mm,
You have to move back and you have to find the right background. And if you can blur the background just a little, then all
mm,
the better. So I'm not a professional car photographer. I've got a friend who runs a business. He asked me to do some shots. So this is one of the shots I did. But what I like about the 40 to 150 is that, again, it goes back to this idea of it's the lens you can trust. You can go all the way out to 150 millimeters. You can
yep,
shoot at f4, and you're going to have contrast and you're going to have resolution,
yep,
which with most zoom lenses at that price you won't get.
yep.
But this with this lens you do, and it's not too big either.
No, no. I mean, in fact, and this is one of those lenses that I constantly recommending people to get. Over the kit lens, they have a similar sort of range kit lens, f4 to 5.6 or 6.3. Can't remember. I mean, I would say to them, for just a couple of hundred more, get the Pro f4.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
well worth the money. The build
yeah.
quality, the weather seal, but the image quality is 2-3 times better than a standard kit lens. And
Oh yeah,
it's definitely good. I mean, I have used this lens a lot for my travel. I took this instead of the 2.8 version, which is double the size and double the
yeah,
weight. Even though that is great lens, don't get me wrong, that is a very, very good lens. I use it for work. Literally, it's my
yeah.
workhorse. But the f4 is what I usually take out for travel.
I think people have remarked that f4 doesn't sound like a professional lens, but there's more to it than that because you're also buying reliable image quality and weather sealing and build quality. And so yes, the 40 to 150 f4 is a stop slower than the f2.8, but it doesn't give anything else away. It's still got
No,
the image quality and it's still got the build quality and weather sealing. Um, it's and I think the Olympus Pro lenses, the word pro in this case is not an empty word. You are getting a professional level of lens performance when you buy a pro lens. You don't always get that.
No, that's right. Yes. And the next one is a Sigma lens, Sigma 8 to
Yes,
16.
yes, that's not the lens doing the vignetting. That was Aurora HDR. But yes, the Sigma 8 to 16, that and up until that point, that's the widest lens I'd ever bought. And at 8 millimeter, it's so wide you have to choose your compositions carefully. And we talked about this, I think, last time, how to shoot with ultra wide lenses.
Yeah,
But the 8 to 16 rather literally opened my eyes to what ultra wide lenses can do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so it optically, it's all right. It's all right. But you
But
remarked earlier,
it's just the whiteness.
I think so. Yeah, I think you can often create blur that isn't the lens's fault,
Yeah,
because this is something else we talked about last week. With the lens this wide, you can get so close to your subject that what you think is edge blur is
yeah,
actually just stuff being out of focus
yeah,
outside the depth of field, the zone of sharpness. Um, so I probably criticized this lens once or twice when it didn't deserve it. But it's still one of my favorites. It's a little bit slow, and the it was a little bit soft and fringy in the corners, but you can forgive a lens a lot when it's affordable and spectacular as this one. I did
yeah,
like it.
yeah. I
Shouldn't have
mean,
sold it. Damn it.
I get one back. I'm pretty sure you can get one relatively cost effective now these days.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Oh
So,
yeah, that was Sigma 18
yep.
to 35 f1.8
Has
on.
anyone used this lens? I just want to ask
Yeah,
because this is actually quite a unique lens, and I
yeah,
don't think they
yeah.
ever remake another version of this.
No,
This is the DSLR lens, right? This is one.
that's right. Yeah, APS-C DSLR lens. Mine was a Nikon fit. So what I love about this lens is APS-C isn't a format you'd normally associate with shallow depth of field. It's quite hard to achieve.
Yep.
But in this case, I shot a 50 millimeters wide open. It's a very sharp lens, wide open, and it just that extra wide aperture lets you create this sense of depth that's quite elusive in smaller formats. And I really liked this particular shot. I mean, it probably would have looked very similar on another camera with a different lens. A lot of the photographs we like are just luck. They're not really to do with the equipment. Nevertheless, I do think the 18 to 35 was a unique lens that wasn't properly appreciated at the time. And I just don't think we're going to see another, sadly.
No, no. I mean, and it's quite hard to imagine what lens manufacturers are thinking these days. I mean, even like
Yeah, yeah,
when you
yeah,
look at
yeah,
the likes of big boys like Canon, Nikon, Sony. We all know what OM system wants now at the moment. It's all zoom lenses and big long lenses,
yeah.
and that's one thing at least we know. And but all the others, it seems to be a little bit of mixed at the moment, and there's no predictions or anything that we can conclude what kind of thing they might want to do. But there are certainly a lot of legendary lenses that we would like to see being remade or adapted to new versions for mirrorless cameras, such as this one here, the 18 to 35 1.8 for APS-C. I can't see Sigma doing any more. I would say APS-C lenses now. They're going to gunning for the full frame
No,
lenses, so that means that you're probably right there. I don't think they're going to remake this one, which is a
but
shame.
just imagine if they made it for Sony eAPS-C.
Mm.
I'm sure it would sell really well, and even Fujimount. I believe I'm right in saying that Sigma makes X mount lenses. This
Not
would this
entirely
would
sure.
no,
I'm fairly certain that Chinese manufacturer may do that.
but
um,
but this is one of a long list of lenses I shouldn't have sold. So I do
yeah,
miss it. It's a big old lens,
yeah.
mind, for
Oh,
APS-C, but then seeing what's come along since and how big lenses are today, it
yeah.
doesn't seem so big anymore.
Speaking of selling lenses, anyone who's listening right now have any experience when it comes to selling lenses that you didn't quite like at the time, but now you are regretting selling it
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
wanted it back? We'd like to hear from you. What kind of lens or what lens or lenses that you have sold and now want it back? I have
So,
a couple, that's for sure.
so I was just reading a comment by GMT Photography about his Fuji gear. I haven't got the Tamron 17 to 70 f2.8 GMT,
Hmm.
if I can call you GMT. But look what I do have. That's the
Oh, let me.
Fujinon 16 f2.8.
Okay.
That's on your list. That is a sweet little lens, utterly unspectacular in its specs. But look how tiny it is. It's a 24 millimeter prime. It's actually rather good. And the other
Mm.
one, oh, I love this lens. It's the 27 millimeter 2.8.
That's a pancake lens, right?
So it's pretty much a pancake lens.
Yep.
This later version has even got an aperture ring. Uh, Now, what I would say about this lens is two things. First of all, the AF actuators are not quiet. This is not a very quick lens. However, the optical performance is off the scale for a pancake lens. It is a
Yep.
terrific lens. So I should have put that in my list, shouldn't I?
Literally,
but
JMT just said that
I,
he bought and
yeah,
sold his Fuji 27 three times.
yeah, yeah. I sold mine once, JMT, and I shouldn't have done. So now I've got the WR version with the aperture ring, and I couldn't be happier. I think I need a faster focusing body because it's a bit slow and noisy on an XT1,
Right.
but it is optically just much better than it ought to be. It is a really good lens.
Ah,
Yeah,
interesting. AF was the reason, but I dedicated
yeah,
to
yeah,
photography
yeah,
only.
yeah.
Right.
If I held this up to the mic, you'd hear it. You'd have to turn the volume down. Oh,
Hang on, sorry about that. I pressed the wrong
oh,
button.
I thought you threw me out.
I thought we ended the show early. So let's go back to the photos here. So this is a Sony 35 1.4 G Master.
Yeah, I should have got a bit closer. This is my pet dog Wilson, just below a sign saying no dogs allowed. So I was quite pleased with that. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Sony cameras, but the G Master lenses are are terrific, and the 35 f1.4 is a really good lens, and it doesn't seem to suffer too much from bokeh fringing either. So
Mm,
so that's where you get color fringing around stuff that's out of focus.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a thumbs up from me for Sony G Master lenses. If only they could make them half the price, I'd be happy. Oh, and if they can make the cameras a bit more exciting, I'd be
I,
even
I, I
happier.
I guess that's my problem, and with
Yeah,
Sony
yeah,
these
yeah,
days is that a lot of the G Mark lenses is even for professional myself, I can't seem to justify the prices,
no,
and I mean let alone amateurs. I mean unless you got a deep pocket, I just find that a lot of the lenses now. I mean, if just for an example, for instance, all manufacturers, Sony has the 51.8, which is the entry level prime lens. You can get that for 130. I bought mine for 130, but now you can get it for even an Amazon full price for £160, which is cheap. Then the next
yeah,
one up, you have to step it up all the way to the the 1.4 G Master, which is like from 160 pound to all the way to £2,000.
yeah,
This is a little bit quite a big jump actually. And they used to have the
yeah.
Sony Zeiss 51.4. I think you can still get them new and for about just over £1,000. But still, from that 160 to 1,100 pound is almost six times the price, 6 7 times the price.
I haven't used every Sony Zeiss, but the ones I have used have not been stellar. They've been all right, but
Mm.
the G Masters I think are in a different league.
But
Um,
in
and
your opinion, do
yeah,
you think it justified the price difference?
well, I think justify is such a loaded word, isn't it? I think if you're a professional and this is how you make your money, and you charge your clients a great deal of money to do it, you can justify it as a business expense. It's just a straightforward profit and loss calculation, isn't it? If you're an enthusiast and you're doing this for the love of it, it is very hard to justify, particularly because if you want to see the benefits of the higher quality optics, you have to become a pixel peeper like me. And then there comes a point where you need some kind of intervention to remind you that photography is about more than just pixels. But I think as a business decision, they make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If you're an amateur or an enthusiast or somebody who does this stuff for the love of it, or for you're a kind of fine art photographer,
Yeah.
then do it for that reason. But I'm not sure you're getting a proportional gain in quality. It's a very personal decision.
I mean, it is. I mean, I just find that the not just the price, but also the size is, you're talking about 3-4 times the size and weight,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
that I think that's ultimately the killer for me. And I
yeah.
mean, I can't see why even a standard 50mm lens can be that big these days.
No,
and
well, no, quite.
I mean,
At
look at
least,
all the older DSLR 1.4, even 1.2 50mm. Remember the Canon
yeah.
51.2 L lens? That wasn't that big, you know. Like it was bigger than the 1.4, but it wasn't like what they are now.
I know what they're going to say though. They're going to say these are optically quite crude lenses, incapable of the kind of resolution that sensors can produce today, and also the focusing would have been quite crude. I mean, back when we started, at least back when I started, when you focus the lens, you move the whole thing in and out.
Yep,
These days, you have little focus groups. There are lots of lenses which have dual focus groups moving in a very carefully choreographed way electronically that are so much more sophisticated than lenses used to be. So I guess this is where a lot of the size comes from. If you want a lens that focuses quickly, it's going to be bigger, I guess. That's what they're going to tell us.
yeah. I'm not entirely sure that I'll be convinced with that statement, but
uh, I was putting forward the kind of proposition that lens makers might give us. It's not
yeah,
my opinion, but I think that's what they try and tell us.
yeah, they might do that. So the next one is the Zeiss.
Right. Zeiss Tuit. Is that how you pronounce it? Tuit?
I have no
12,
idea.
12 millimeter f2.8 for APS-C. I had this on a Fujifilm body. I really liked it for the same reasons I like the Hasselblad XCD 21 millimeter. It was a really sharp lens
Mm,
right into the corners. If I'll anticipate your comments, I mean, if that's what you need,
yeah.
it's what appealed to me about it. Um, it is sadly another lens I sold, and I shouldn't have done because they're quite hard to find now.
Ah,
The only thing I didn't like about it was that it was a bit wide at the front end,
yeah,
so it's a bit like a kind of trumpet shape. And also, I didn't feel the build was as good as Fujifilm's own lenses. So
yeah.
when I got it out of my camera bag, it was like a kind of
Was it a
not
manual focus
disappointment.
lens? Was it a manual
No,
focus lens?
no, it's
It's auto.
autofocus. Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite quick as well. Yeah.
Ah.
I should have got a picture ready, but it was optically a really, really good lens. Should have kept it. There we go again.
It's
hard,
something fun.
quite
It's
hard to
something
find
funny
though.
about Zeiss lenses is that I find that they seem to slowly disappearing from the photography scene,
Yeah, yeah.
which
I think
is, I'm a little bit worried about them.
it's been happening a while. I think they're still busy in the cinema lens market,
Yeah,
but consumer lenses, no. I think they're gone.
yeah. I mean, well,
I'm afraid.
are they? I think they're owned by Cosina as well, right? And
Oh, are they? I didn't
yeah,
know that.
I'm not entirely. I know, and that was Voigtlander. I think that was Voigtlander.
Yeah,
Zeiss is probably
Voigtlander
still
is.
Zeiss,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, I loved a lot of the Zeiss M mount lenses for Leica. And
yeah,
they are quite good, and I think they are still very good. But yeah, it's a sad thing to see that I don't hear from them anymore in terms of new optic
No,
releases.
no.
The last that we heard from them was probably when Sony was collaborating with them. We just talked literally just talked about when they released a bunch of collaboration lenses with Sony Zeiss, and for few lenses. But that's it. I mean, they used to use their branded optics for their compact camera, like the RX1. The compact fixed lens, full frame fixed compact
Yeah,
lens. They
yeah,
had
but
the
I think that
35 2.8. I remember that was.
yeah, but I think a lot of the compact camera tie-ins were kind of badge engineering. So um, I don't want to get sued by Leica or Zeiss, but I think it's just a case of Sony or who did the or Panasonic saying to Leica or Zeiss, "What do you think of this lens design?" And Leica or Zeiss says, "Yeah, it's all right." And do you want a badge? And then perhaps some money changes hands, and it's
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
Can
Well,
can we can we go back 2 minutes so I didn't say any of that? But but
let's rewind and
but you
cut
know,
it.
but no, I did get the feeling quite a lot with these collaborations with manufacturers. You
Yeah,
weren't getting the full experience. You were
no.
getting a branded product, which was probably better than the kind of basic vanilla lens, but not quite the same as the real thing.
No, I mean,
I'll
obviously,
stop there. I'll stop there.
if you look at I mean, yeah, if you look at the Leica badged Panasonic lenses, I mean, they are better than the standard Panasonic lenses, that's for sure. And but then you look at the price difference compared to the real Leica lens that is made in
Yeah,
Germany. You're looking paying almost 10 times the price for
I
a
mean,
standard Leica lens compared
like
to
like
a
a
Panasonic.
like it doesn't make MFT lenses,
No,
and Zeiss doesn't make APS-C lenses. So there's obviously there's it's clearly some manufacturing collaboration going on where the lenses are being made somewhere else. But
we started a
I
conspiracy
think
theory here now.
think I make a hole for myself here. Um, Talking about the Panasonic lenses, I've used a few.
Yep.
Um, and this is going to be one of those afternoons where I just keep digging deeper, isn't it?
Mm.
I don't think the best Panasonic MFT lenses are as good as the best OM system pro lenses.
Ooh. Right. I have a let's say that I have tested a bunch of Panasonic lenses, and I could
Yeah.
agree most of it. I think there are two Panasonic lenses that I really think optically is quite stellar. One of them is the 42.5 1.2 Nauticron,
I haven't
and
used it.
that
Okay.
is
Yeah.
a fantastic lens. I mean, I did a review way back, and also did a comparison with the Olympus 45 1.2, which is kind of equivalent lens between the two. I mean, they are both fantastic lenses, just very very different in terms of lens rendering. So the
Mm.
autofocus area, and things like that is quite different. So it's I wouldn't say which one is better. It just depends on your preference and how the images you want them to look like after those lenses. And the other Panasonic Leica lens that I think is really really good is the very long tele prime, the 200 2.8.
Uh,
That is phenomenal. That lens. I mean, I think on the Olympus never made a 200 mil prime lens. They had a 300 f4 Pro,
yeah.
and that is a very good lens. That's a great lens, really really sharp. I would say the next one down would be the Panasonic Leica 200 mil 2.8, and
Okay.
it's quite a special lens. Quite a special lens. It's a shame that we don't see any fast 2.8 primes from Olympus, and because so far they don't have any, to be quite honest, and they have the f4, and they have the f4.5 Pro, the 150 to 400. And all the long tail doesn't seem to have anything faster than f4. So I would like to see maybe perhaps at some point a zoom at that sort of range will have some 2.8 optics. I think that would be quite good.
I suppose to see 75 f1.8, but I don't know whether the autofocus is really kind of there for sports and wildlife. I don't know. It's probably a bit short for that kind of thing, isn't it?
It's pretty fast, but then yeah, it's, I mean, for
Right.
75, I mean, full frame 150 aren't exactly that long,
No,
and
no, no,
but it's
no.
it's long enough for portrait, but not long enough for sports or wildlife. And depending on
Yeah,
what sort of distance you are, I think you need something at least 150 to 200 kind of range, and to be able to make it, I mean, useful for wildlife photographers.
yeah, yeah. It's curious, isn't it? I guess the home system thinks that zooms are the future.
Zooms are the
I'm not
future.
sure that's true. I'm not sure that's true. Sigma does something. So with that new 500 millimeter f5.6
Yeah,
for full frame, but
yeah.
it's interesting. I do have a somewhat early Panasonic 20, no, it's not 20, it's a 12 to 35. So that's like a 24 to 70 equivalent. I know there's a newer one and it's quite expensive, but this one, I've also got the Olympus 12 to 40. This Panasonic lens, I thought, oh, it's going to be as good, isn't it? It's actually not really. So
Well, saying that though,
that has helped my opinion. That's kind of affected my opinion to a
yeah, well,
degree.
but I think it's quite universal that everyone who used both lenses actually said the Olympus 12 to 40 2.8 is one of the sharpest standard zoom lenses you can get for the money.
Yeah, it's
And
really annoying. So I don't like it very much to use. It's just too good not to use.
I mean, I like using it actually, and sometime and just walking around in London, I just have that lens on for some street photography. Just it's quite easy, just one lens, you kind of cover most of it. I can do some street
Yeah,
portrait if I really want to. Yeah, I do like the 2.8. And the
yeah,
f4 version is for my travel, but the 2.8 is usually what I do, photo walk and things like that. Just one lens and nothing else, and that will
yeah,
be it. So let's go back to a
yeah.
little bit of a photo talk, shall we?
Sorry, yes,
And
yeah.
so now your list is gone. I think let's just start with me then.
Good
Um,
riddance.
so a little bit of a break there. I mean, we're going to come back to a lot of the comments that we see already, and in fact, this is one of them. And I see Marty actually said your favorite lens is 25 millimeters 1.8, and in fact, this photograph is exactly from that lens. So I was in New York and walking around. I just have my travel system on. I mean, let me just try to think what lenses I had. I had the 25 1.8. I had the 40 to 150 2.8. I didn't have the f4. It wasn't launched yet. And also I had the 17 millimeters 1.8 as well. So I kept everything quite light. And the only thing that I couldn't keep it light at the time is the 150, so the 40 to 150, the long tele zoom. If they had the f4 version, then I would have bought that instead of the 2.8, because you can see the type of photograph that I usually do in travel is that I don't need shallow depth of field. I don't need
Mm,
because of how good the stabilization is with OM systems, I don't really need high ISOs and or tripod. So I just love to have all the details. I don't need to shoot wide open to get shallow depth of field. So like at things like this, I stop down to f6, 6.3, f8, and to do this type of shot. And yeah, I love details when it comes to travel photography. So this is kind of my way of photographing things, and whether it's going to be 1.2 lens, I'm not necessarily I'm going to use 1.2. Most likely I'm going to stop down anyway. The only time that I may bring a pro lens for travel is that I know for a fact that I'm going there for it's going to be better by weather, and that's the only time that I would take a pro lens. But if you go to New York, even it's raining, I know it's not supposed to, but then I'll be okay with 1.8 lenses. Light drizzles is okay. I mean, I could just dry it off or just cover it in between shoots, and as soon as I find something, I just open up again and just take a couple of shots and cover it again. So it's not the end of the day. So anyway, so the 25 1.8 is actually a pretty good lens, a pretty decent lens, and also very, very affordable. I like cheap lenses, as much as that I make money from photography. I mean, I do lust over expensive lenses, but sometimes I just think that some of the optics are a little bit overpriced, and especially in today's market, uh, 'cause just really just comparing to what I'm used to, perhaps in the SLR days, and how much I used to pay these lenses, and from that kind of comparison, I just find a lot of the lenses that being marketed today is simply, at least to me anyway, and is a bit over the top.
Yeah.
I know Leica lenses are expensive, but then again, those are handmade lenses, almost like jewelry in a way. But a lot of the normal consumer lenses, you're now getting like some of the 1.4 lenses are, all of them are over a grand. Like that was not the case in a way back. We used to buy. Rod, remember, like even the 51 1.4, whether it's going to be Nikon or Canon, you can get it for like £400, £500. These days, you can
I,
only get a 1.8.
I think the only thing I'd say about that is that back in the day, those 1.4 lenses weren't that great. They're not like a 1.4 lens today, which can be absolutely stellar, wide open.
Mm.
However, however, who consistently shoots wide open at f1.4 looking for razor sharp results? If you do that all the time,
Yep.
modern lenses make a lot of sense. But if you don't do it all the time, I think you're spending a lot of money on a
Yep.
very big lens.
Absolutely. Well, talking about wide open performance, and one of my all-time favorite lenses, is actually this here. And let me just bring it back to the studio. There we go. Is this? This is the. Not sure you can actually see it. Let me just take the lens out, and this is the Leica Summilux 35 millimeters 1.4. This is an absolute
Is that the one?
engineering
That's the 1.4.
engineering marvel. Yes, this is a 1.4. It's
Okay,
probably the smallest full frame 1.4 lens you can get.
that's so still.
And it's a 30, and it's a 35. Right. Just talk about, like, earlier you just said a lot of these 1.4 lenses weren't that great. And in fact, this guy here at 1.4 is probably one of the worst I've seen.
Not what I thought you were going to say.
But then again, these lenses, they made 1.4 for the photographer only kind of like an emergency cases back in the 60s
Yeah,
and 70s. They
yeah.
weren't really for you to shoot wide open all the time to get shallow depth of field,
No.
to get the bokeh or anything like that. They really are for low light purposes. If you struggle with light, don't forget that a lot of the time in the old days that film speed are very, very slow by comparison, and having a 1.4 is a make or break in situations, and whether a photographer can actually take a shot or not. So it's a very different usage back in the days. That if I just go back to the image that I just showed you earlier, that this is a shot that I actually did with 1.4 wide open. You can see, if I zoom in a little bit more, you can actually see a lot of halos, a lot of smearings and everything. You can see the details. So it's not sharp by any means, but it does have character. It does have that
Well,
kind of charming old character.
I think we're very close to a time, if we haven't arrived already, when people will pay a great deal of money to get an f1.4 lens that isn't very sharp, because it's all part of the look.
Yep.
Now that everyone has got razor sharp f1.4s, this kind of look is going to be at a premium. Oh, besides, Jimmy, you can't complain about the cost of modern lenses. Then wave a Leica Summilux 35
No,
1.4 in front of us.
no, no,
But
no, no. Well,
having
hang on
said
a
that,
second. I bought this lens. I bought this lens many years ago for,
yeah,
I think, £800.
yeah, okay.
But now you can't get this in this condition for less than £2,500, and that I know it's been appreciated in price, and but yeah, it wasn't that expensive, for that, because no one wanted it at the time. But like you said, I think these days people started to realize, oh, that's the Leica look, that is a character, and then that people are now fighting for it.
They are, and I think as well, you could probably argue that with Leica lenses, you buy one once and that's it.
Yeah,
You don't have to keep buying them. But I think you could start a bit of a trend here, Jimmy. If you can convince people
yeah.
that the Leica Summilux look is rarer than the Fujifilm X106 look, suddenly, suddenly the pendulums are going to shift. Nobody will want an X106 anymore. Everyone will want
Uh,
a Leica
Look,
Summilux.
guys, it looks like the light looks like the Fuji X106, right? Silver and black, and it's got a
Yeah,
35 mils on, and
yeah.
and it's got the vintage look if you want to shoot wide open 1.4. If not, you can stop it down to have a more clinical look by 2.8. So yeah, I got a X106 beta here. That's for sure.
Have you?
Uh,
Oh, a beta. I thought I meant like beta version. Yeah, I think you have. I think you have.
yes, and let's go to the next image. So interestingly, this is the exact opposite. It's the same lens, but as soon as I stop down to f3.5 or 5.6, can't remember now. This is film, and you can see it's actually very, very sharp. It's no different to any modern lenses. So this lens is actually quite versatile. But like you said, Rod, earlier, if you're looking for lenses with character, most likely you have to shoot wide open because then you can see the rendering of the lens a lot more. Because anything stopped down would not be able to tell you exactly
No.
because everything's just sharp and contrasty. But the wide open photographs would definitely tell you how the images are drawn, on the outer focus area, and that is what created the character of the lenses in most cases. But in some of the older vintage lenses, like this one here, and when you shoot wide open, you do see a lot of this smearing on the edges, and you do have a lot of chromatic aberrations. You do have a lot of ghostings because the coatings aren't built for modern digital lenses, and so you do have a lot of I would say defects or flaw in today's standards. But
Yeah.
it's certainly okay if you don't mind the character of the lens in a way. Yeah, I certainly don't mind flares to start with.
Have you shot with many digital Leicas, Leica M's? That is.
Yes,
I've
yes,
only shot with the M10, the M11, and the M10 monochrome, but the M10 and the M11. What I did notice is that it's perhaps Leica's processing, but the contrast is off the scale sometimes, and
yeah.
particularly with blue skies. I mean, it's a look I like particularly, but I wonder if this is a characteristic Leica look, because you really do get this really strong contrast. I'm not sure it's the lens; it's probably the processing, but it's all part of the look.
I think digitally is it's a lot of processing when it comes to digital, and I mean
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
do
think
I
so.
do
Yeah,
like I do like high contrast images, and to be
yeah,
quite honest, it's quite hard to tell these days when you use the digital
yeah,
Leica or even film,
yeah.
but what I can say is that compared to the older Leica lenses, that tends to be less contrast compared to the newer ones.
Right.
I think that mostly because the lower contrast helps in lower light situations when you bring up the details a little bit more in the darker shadows. So that helps the photographer photograph easier in the lower light situations or dimmer situations. So when you come to processing, it's up to you whether you want to push the film or not. And while it's not looking it completely black, basically. So I think
Yeah.
that the lower contrast lenses are definitely helping in the old days. Not so sure about now, and although people might still like the hazy look, that's kind of like a trendy thing as well. So
So
this is
is
another.
this
Sorry,
is this film again?
this is actually digital. This is a shot with the digital MP with the same lens again. This is the 35 shot wide open. You can see the little bit of a kind of glowy look on on the where the highlights are. So this is another kind of unique element of this particular lens. A lot of people have talked about the Leica glow, and this is exactly what it is. So you do have that kind of dreamy aesthetics when it's come to specular highlights and all the brighter areas. It will come through that, and so if you like that look, it may not be for everyone because some people may not actually like this kind of look. So it really really depends on whether any kind of older rendering like this is a love and hate thing. I guess it's more like Marmite in a way.
Well, I used to think that lens rendering was all hokum
Yeah,
until I reviewed a Leica M. It might have been an M8, might have been an M10,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I didn't have a Summilux, I had a Summicron. I think I had a 28 f2,
Yep.
and I did a couple of shots indoors of some workmates just working in the office at
Yep.
f2, and it was utterly different in its appearance
Mm.
to any other digital lens I've used
Yep.
with a similar focal length and a similar aperture. It's a completely different rendering. So whether or not you like it and whether you think it's worth paying the extra money for, it is definitely very characterful, I think.
It
The
is.
wider you shoot, the more you notice.
Yes, absolutely. And I just saw Christopher saying that I know
Yes.
51 watching and 14
Thank
likes. Come
you.
on, guys, give
Thank
us
you.
some likes, right?
I
but
hate it.
but the thing that caught me is not about the likes. It's about what he said at the end.
Yeah.
85 millimeters 1.2, which is
Right. Right.
actually also one of my all-time favorite lenses, which I told Rod earlier that I wanted to get one back. Not the FD version. I have the FD right here, and I can show you right now. I have the FD one here, which I did adapt to Leica, and also on the Nikon ZF full frame. I mean, I could use this on the Micro Four Third, which I did. I have some photos that I can show you using on a MFT camera. But I think for the full effect, you do need a full frame a body to realize
Yeah.
the rendering of the lens, because you can everything you just involve in full view. You can actually see everything behind you or behind the subject. It's just lovely. But the one that I'm talking about is the DSLR version or SLR version, the 85 millimeters 1.2 Mark 1.2 L Mark 2, not the Mark 1 but Mark 2, which is kind of like the last 1.2 that they did before they move on to the 1.4 L. And I personally sold that lens, and when I switched from Canon to Micro Four Third, I sold the lens, and now I want it back. I really want it back, and so it's just one of those things, Now I kind of miss it. The more I look at it, the more I miss it,
Well, funnily
which is a
enough,
shame.
I had a workmate who did wedding photography on the side, and for a long time he shot with Canon. He had a 5G4, and he
Yep.
used the 85 1.2, and he kept coming saying, "Oh, it's very slow. It's very hard to hit the focus, and it's not that sharp." And then eventually he bought the 85 1.4, and he said, "Oh, it focuses faster. It's sharper. It's just much easier to use." So I said, "It's much better then." So, oh, no, I kind of like 1.2 still. So he didn't like shooting with it particularly, but he just liked the look of
The
the
look,
old
yeah. I mean,
1.2.
I must agree. I mean, those photos that I took with the 85 1.2 at the time, it just special. I think a lot of the characters come from the 1.2. It just really something. It's something that I can't quite describe. It's just the look of it. I don't think I have any sample of the photos that I took with the 1.2 in today's show, and but I try to dig some up. Maybe I will show it in another time. But those images are definitely really interesting. So this is the final shot of the 35 Summilux that I had, and this is stopped down to f2 or 2.8, and if I remember correctly. And because it's still relatively shallow, you can still see a little bit of out of focus area, and it certainly had that kind of vintage look to it. And it's definitely not modern. You can tell the rendering of the lens. The subject obviously is pin sharp focus, but the background is all a little bit blur. But yeah, you can see all it's just the way it looks. If I'm just trying to expand the lens a little bit, so expand it a little bit more so you can actually see. Yeah, you can see that where the CCTV is and the pole. You can see how it draws. It's very different to how modern lenses would draw them these days. They'll be a lot more softer, and this in a way is a little bit harsh, but harsh to the point that I think is confusing. But that's how a lot of the older lenses used to draw things like this, and which is, I find it quite interesting. More interesting what today's renderings are all about. It's very creamy, softer bokeh, and I think that's what they're aiming for nowadays, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think what strikes me about fashions in photography and how they change is that at college I studied economics. And one of the oldest rules of economics is, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, John Maynard Keynes in his theories about supply and demand. They still work today. If
Yep.
everyone can do it, nobody wants it. So if everyone can shoot today at f1.4 or f1.2 and get a lovely feathery background blur,
Yep.
we'll reach a point when nobody wants to do it. What people will actually want, they'll want depth of field again. So people want scarcity. They
Yep.
don't want what's common. They want what is scarce. And that's the way the fashions will move, I think.
And that's always been the case. And we
Yeah,
look at the likes of X100, right, the Fuji, and it's
yeah.
you can't get hold of them, and they can keep pushing the second-hand price up. Well, I'm not sure now. Now the
Yeah.
Mark 6 come out, I'm not entirely sure how the
Um,
second-hand price is going to hold.
it's gone hard because people know they can't get the 6 or won't be able to for a long time. So the 5 becomes the substitute. So that itself has pushed the prices up.
Mm.
Bizarrely, I checked the price of buying an old Fujifilm X30,
Yep.
that little compact camera.
Yep.
That selling for more on MPB now than what I paid for it 8 years ago. So
Right.
it's the halo effect. It is utterly unlike the X106 technically, but
Yep.
it has the look. So
Yep.
it just rubs off on everything else on the used camera market. So we're a bit stuck either way, I think.
Yeah.
You won't get a cheap X100 for a long, long time because everybody else will be looking for one too.
Well, that's we shall wait and see to see whether
We
that
shall
that
see. We shall see.
that's true. The next lens that on my list is the it's kind of like my replacement to the Leica Summilux, and that is actually the Olympus 17mm 1.2 Pro.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I showed you the 17 1.8 earlier, which is a great little prime lens. It's great for travel, but when it comes to draw and the rendering, the look of it, I much prefer the 1.2. And I shoot them wide open because I can then get the character out. And you can see this particular shot here, and it's definitely more clinical. You can see the sharpness from the faces, but at the same time, the background rendering, a lot of the Olympus Pro lenses, especially the Prime, and they have this feather bokeh thing that they always been advertising. And I do find it true that I kind of like this kind of look. Whether it's a special term feather bokeh or not, and I do actually quite like what I see. So I like the 17 1.2, I like the 45 1.2 and the 25 1.2. I think all of them have a similar color character in them, and but the 17 is definitely one that I quite enjoy seeing because I generally like a 35mm focal length anyway, just a little bit wider, not too tight, and so I can get a lot of environment into it. At the same time, I just love how the whole thing draws in terms of the outer focus area. This is the next shot here, which is the same thing. Now this time I stopped down the lens to about f5.6. Same lens, so similar to the Leica Summilux. Once you stop down, you get everything in focus, everything just sharp. So in that case, it's not much different to the older Summilux that I used to use when during the film era. And then I just go quickly for the next one now. So this is again, and I shot a little bit wide open, moving further away from the subject, and you can still have a little bit of subject separations here. And this is something I quite enjoy in MFT. So for those who may want to agree or not agree, is that if I use a full frame using a 35 1.4 shoot wide open, the background will be much blurrer. And actually, I don't like it too blur in this. In a lot of my portrait photography, I like to see subject separations, but I don't want to see a complete blurred out background. And this is kind of my thing. And I'm pretty sure some may disagree. Some think, oh, portrait, you're gonna have to have a stronger subject separation between subject and the background. But in my case, I tend not to do that. I mean, I like a little bit of it. I don't like too much. I just want to see exactly where the subject is. I want to see the environment. I want to see what they were doing there. In this particular case, even on the MFT or shoot 1.2, the separation is just about right. And it doesn't like making too destructive to the way that I can't recognize where she is. And then so that is really good. I mean, this is very, very subjective and very debatable, I guess. And when people
It,
say that, oh, I like it. When you buy a f1.2, f1.4, f.95 lens, I got to shoot it wide open and see the maximum separation as possible. Almost like what we talk about 85 1.2, right, Rod?
I think it depends as well, doesn't it? It depends on the size you're looking at the image. Even something as basic as that. If you look at this image at this size, you might say, "Oh, that background is quite sharp." If you're looking at an A3 size print of exactly the same image, you'd
Yeah,
say, "Oh, that background is quite blurred." It depends on the context and the magnification as well. So there, for example, you would say, "Oh, that's good separation." And if you
mm,
zoom back out again, you'd say, "Oh, that's not very good separation." It's the same photo. It's just
yeah,
you're looking at it at a different scale. So it's not quite as simple as saying you need this amount of separation exactly, because it depends on how you're going to be looking at the image, the size it's going to be viewed at, and as you say, what you want to portray. If
yeah,
the background is part of the if the background is part of the story, you need
yeah.
to be able to recognize it.
Absolutely. So next lens is going to be interesting, and I need to bring it back to the studio here because I have it right here underneath me. Oh, it's a heavy beast, but it's actually one of my favorites. Funny enough, right? This is it. This beast here. If I take out
Oh,
the
good
lens
lord.
because it's gigantic. This is the original and 4/3 Olympus lens. This is the 35 to 100 f2. So this was the fastest zoom lens you can get at the time, f2, because no one else does anything faster than 2.8 for most of the zoom
Yeah,
lenses,
yeah.
and that's f2. It's heavy as hell. These things. I mean, I hate to handle these things, but the images comes from it. It's very special. I just try and I got the images here. Just I'm trying to show you guys. There you go. So it's very special. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
it certainly had a little bit of the old school charm, while it still give me the ability to get sharp focus on the subject. So it's definitely interesting in that way, and I don't mind using that at all. In a full frame kind of term, and this guy will be 70 to 200. And depth of field is kind of equivalent to about f4 depth of field, so it's not particularly high index in terms of separations. There is relatively modest, but I just love how the image has been drawn in the background. If you look at the let me just zoom it out a little bit, but zoom it in a little bit. So if you look at the side here, you just look at the just on her right, you can see those rendering there. It's just really kind of lovely, soft, diffused kind of way, and I really kind of like that look. Something that I don't think that modern lenses will be able to do, because they would just it's kind of soft. It could be creamy, but it won't retain those little details there in a way that this lens does. So it's a very different lens altogether. If I use the 40 to 150 2.8 Pro these days, if I do the same shot, it will be completely different look altogether. So I guess this particular shot here is very I mean, this lens is very, very different and it's very special. And in a way, you can't even get one now because it's quite hard to find it.
Mm. Well, quite hard to find a camera you can put it on as well. Can you get
Well,
adapters for four
yes.
thirds to MFT?
Not many now.
So
I think all been taken by collectors, and I have one right here. And if I just go back out, and so I have the MMF3 adapter, which used to mount on
okay.
the Micro Four Thirds, so I can use it on all the OM1, all the EM1s, and everything like that. And you do need a big body to hold this lens because it's very
Yeah.
heavy. It's not something that I would say hand holdable for long. The lens
No,
itself, I think, is almost 2 kilograms. It's quite a heavy
you're
beast.
kidding. That's a lot
It is a
for
lot. I mean,
MFT.
people are complaining about the
MFT
latest
four thirds.
150 to 600 lens. This is about the same size as the same weight as that thing.
So what were you shooting with back then? Were you using an EM1 or something like
I
that?
was using the EM1. Yeah, I was
No,
using
the
the EM1.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had an E400 and E410 for a while, and I did like the E620, but I never had the E1.
I've never shot. To be honest, I've never used Olympus 4-third camera before ever. The first I
No,
bought this lens. I bought this lens just because I like the look of the images, and
I
after I've
see.
done some
Right.
research, and I just bought the lens for use on my EM1 Mark II.
Ah,
Yes,
those Olympus SLRs, they never got much credit at the time. They're nice cameras to handle.
they were. I
The
mean,
the the 400 and the 410 were super sweet,
I mean, for people that
really
I
nice.
talked to, everyone vouched for the E1, and they said the E1 was just one of the
Yeah,
best handling cameras ever. I mean, I haven't
yeah.
touched one, so I'm not entirely sure, how it feels like to shoot with one. But I'm pretty sure if
Same,
everyone loves it, then it should be quite good.
same then is now a lot of center snobbery going on, I'm afraid. And that kind of killed the Olympus SLRs, and they didn't deserve it. Hey
No,
ho, ancient
hey ho.
history.
Hey ho, hey ho, indeed. And so this is kind of my other lens that I really liked is the 45 1.2 for the same reason as the 17 1.2 is the rendering of it. And this one has the famous feather bokeh now in full display. You can see how soft the background is. Um, this is definitely more modern, but not to the extent I would say to the G Master level or to any of the top line Nikon or Canon lenses level. Not about sharpness, but it's about how it draws the outer focus area. I certainly think that it, for me anyway, is more pleasing for portraits. And I'm a portrait photographer, so all the lenses that I chose in this list is all about uh, uh, how I would like to see my images to look, not so much about technical perfections, and which Rod talked about earlier. So like I don't mind less sharp as long as give me that kind of look and that sort of feel that I'm going
Yeah.
for. So that's always kind of my case anyway. To be quite honest, I don't think my clients will ever really notice that much in terms of slight lack of sharpness here and there. They just wouldn't know at all.
They just want the look.
They just want to look indeed, and
Yeah.
but there are this is all the 45 1.2 images here, and you can see that people always say that Michael Four Thirds can't get separation because we don't have have the same depth of field. But I would totally disagree because a MFT can get shallow depth of field. You just have to play around with the background and your distance between the lens and the subject.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you have a 2.8 lens, you can still get some separations here and there depending on how close you are to the subject. Of course, it's not going to be the same because it's a different format, it's a different crop factor. You do have to adjust to it. And but if you say that Michael Four Thirds can't get shallow depth of field, I think that's a pretty nonsense statement.
I suppose what you would say is that if you wanted more than that, you wouldn't have to change your system. You just put the 40 to 150 2.8 on and get further away.
Yep. And once again, this is all the 45 1.2, which is I really like. So let's jump into a little bit on a slightly different lens, which is the same 45, but then now again I'm talking about the 1.8 brother. This is the lens that I really like, and for travel, same reason as the 17 1.8 that I mentioned earlier. I genuinely love all the 1.8 primes that Olympus made because they are small, they are cheap, and they are optically pretty good. I wouldn't say that they're bad at all. And this one, you can see that it's perfectly fine for portrait use, and that you can get subject separations, you get great sharpness, not to the 1.2 level, but you still get great resolutions there, perfectly fine with the 20 megapixels. I mean, and I'm pretty sure even if you go to the 24 on the Panasonic bodies, it's still going to be okay. This shot was actually taken in the EM5 Mark III launch. I think you were there as well, Rod.
Good Lord. So I was.
In
EM5, no, I didn't.
in,
EM5
Pe-
3,
in
Kidsville.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I
I
was
remember
there.
that.
I took this shot right there, and with the model, I believe, and yeah. So this is
I
also
didn't know we had
1.8.
any models. You never told me we had models. I was just taking pictures of ski lifts and sunsets. Nobody told me.
Well, we were all there. Were you just left alone up there on the hill?
Yeah, no, yeah, I was. Yeah. I had my the scariest moments of my life on that trip because they put us in a ski lift to go up to the top of the hill. And
Yeah.
nobody told me you pull a bar down to keep you in.
You
So I
didn't
was
pull it
going up on
down.
this. No,
Oh gosh,
no,
that must be dangerous.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
I
dear.
was scared stiff.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But I
But
lived.
that,
I lived, as you can see. Yeah,
as you can see, as you can see.
yeah,
So again, these are all the 1.44 1.8, and again, I'm just trying to show you guys what you can do with 48 45 1.8, and because for those who are into portrait and limited budgets, and want a maybe perhaps not even budget, but perhaps you want a smaller system to do portraits. The 45 1.8 I think is really really good for that, and you can see the is perfectly fine to achieve a degree of subject separations. You can get some lovely shots there. And earlier you told me we just talked about 75 1.8, and this is done by the 75 1.8, the slightly longer portrait lens, and I think it's very sharp. And is I think based on the lensreview.com, it's definitely based on the test anyway. It's one of the sharpest Olympus lenses ever made. The 75 1.8. I can definitely concur that it's really great. It's a good lens. But as a portrait guy, even though I'm a portrait guy, I do find the 75 1.8 to be a little bit limited, because in a full frame term, this is 150 mil, and
yeah,
that's a little bit
yeah,
long for my kind of work. I kind of like to get a little bit closer to the subject. So 45 perhaps, or 90 millimeters in full frame is kind of my maximum. And I wouldn't want to go further than that if I want to do any shots. So 150, it really is. I mean, for even for half-length portrait like this that I'm displaying right here, I have to go quite far from her to take the shot, because of the 150 equivalent focal length. So this is not really an easy portrait lens to use, but you can get some really lovely images from it. And the compression was just right. The detail, obviously, this is sharp. This thing is really really sharp, and is punchy. It's very contrasty as well. Even shooting 1.8, this lens is just phenomenal. Now, finally, before we end my list, is the 85 1.2. There we go. Then we've got one shot from the 85 1.2. This is actually from the original FD version on the Menu SLR back in the 80s. So I adapted this lens on the. This is actually from the MFT. So I shot this with an MFT EM1X, and I shot this shot with the 85. So again, because it's 85 on a micro four thirds, becomes 160. So it's actually a very very long lens. So I have to actually walk further away from her to get this shot. So it's not really a practical lens in that sense. And the 85s, if I'm going to use the lens, I will definitely use it on a full frame body rather than an MFT. Hence that I don't think I'm gonna ever use this lens on an MFT again, just because it's just a little bit too long for what I normally would do. But yeah, certainly that lens has some character, so I'm looking forward to getting my EF version back.
I had a similar experience with the Olympus 60mm macro, which I had for a while to do product shots for reviews and the like. But I tend to do a lot of my photography in the kitchen, on a
Yep,
kitchen island. It's going to be
yep,
in the lights nice. But with the 16mm, I was having to put my tripod in the dining room because I couldn't, because it's such a long lens. It's
yeah,
120mm equivalent, just a little bit too long. And
yeah,
is good for the perspective, and certainly
yep.
good in terms of image quality. Just wasn't very practical to use, just a little bit too long.
I have the same feeling, because I have the 60, and I love that
Yeah,
lens because of how good it is for the price and
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
compact it is, and weather sealed. That lens is weather sealed as well. But the only thing is, like you said, is a little bit long. And sometime at
Yeah,
home, if I want to do some product shots or some close up, and I just find myself always having to back away from the object
yeah,
that I'm trying to photograph to get the frame that I want. So I ended
yeah.
up using the 30mm macro, which is the little brother of his,
I should have thought. Yeah,
and I actually use it a lot more for filming details or to do some product shot, detail shots, because it's a lot easier to use, just a lot smaller and cheaper, and
yeah,
compared to
yeah.
the 60. I think they put the price up a little bit as well. The 60 now, I think it's about
It is quite
480
expensive.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the thing is, when you pick it up, you think, oh, it's very light. you think it's quite plasticky. You think
Yep.
this is going to be a bit rubbish. Nothing could be further from the truth, but it doesn't feel like a premium lens, does it really?
No, no. And I'm just looking at some of the comments right here. We can start going through some of the lenses that you guys have chosen here. Um, oh, Nomadic Tonka. So what are your thoughts on the MFT sensor in the announce of Zcam E2 M5G?
I don't know much about Zcams. I know of
No.
them, but
Well,
16.
16 stop dynamic. I mean, this is on paper though. I mean, a lot of things I
Yeah,
think on paper specification and compared to real life performance is always a little bit different, and that's how I found. And a lot of the cases, I mean, even like people talk about bitrate a lot, 12-bit compared to 14-bit images
yeah,
in real use. You're not going to see much difference unless in a very specific case, and then you see the gradation between colors and tones, and you start to see that. But in most complex scenes and like street photography, for instance, if you have a lot of things happening in the frame, I don't think you're going to notice much difference between 12-bit and 14 bits, to be quite honest.
and as for dynamic range, that's a kind of difficult one. I've never seen 16 stops quoted for MFT before. Only for larger formats. I'll look it up and try and find out. But there's a difference between measurable dynamic range and usable dynamic range as well. You don't know
Yep.
how noisy the shadows are. I mean, from my point of view, the thing I most often use extended dynamic range for is highlight recovery. And I shoot with cameras that can capture 14-bit RAW and MFT cameras to capture 12-bit RAW. I don't see a difference in the kind of highlight recovery I do. The I might see a difference in the shadows, but I think that's often more to do with the sensor size than the bit depth. So I've got 14 cameras to shoot 14-bit RAW in APS-C and full frame that have nice clean shadows that come up well. But I
Yep.
think that's got more to do with the sensor size than
Yep.
the fact they're 14-bit RAWs. I'm very suspicious about this idea of equating the bit depth of RAW files with the actual dynamic range, because in between all of this, there's the camera's analog to digital converter, which is
Yep.
doing who knows what. So
Yep.
anyway, 16 stops. Well, let's see if anyone gets 16 stops out of it. It's interesting. It's interesting, but this kind of dynamic range is quite. It's not only difficult to capture. You need sensors that are capable of capturing it, but becomes incredibly difficult to grade. I mean, it gives you a wider operating window if you really mess up your exposure. But if
Mm.
you've got a scene that actually has 16 stops of brightness variation, I'm I would suspect it's going to be almost impossible to make that look right. It'll either look flat as heck, or you have to sacrifice shadows or highlights and decide where to pitch your exposure. But you probably do a lot more grading than I do, Jimmy. What do you think?
I mean, I would agree. I mean, and also to make use of that 16 stop dynamic range, you most likely need to shoot raw videos and then using
Yeah,
any
I think so.
compressed format, because
Yeah,
once you start compressing it, you are already losing a lot of the data.
yeah,
No matter how you look at it. So when you shoot raw and actually, I can echo what Rod just said. Once you start grading it, you have to pick whether you want to highlight, whether you want to shadow. Is a weird situations there when it comes to filming,
yeah.
editing, and not like photography when you kind of like almost creating like a HDR shot. And yeah, it's certainly very interesting to see. I mean, I would like to see what the 16 stop ever MFT sensor will look like in video, and yeah, something I have to look out for. Perhaps I'll see if I can ask Ecamm to send me a unit to have a look.
Yeah, because you're catching up with your videos now, aren't you, Jimmy? I'm sure you can fit another one in.
Yeah. I hope so. I got too many. Team Afghan here saying that here's mine. My list is the 4-third 150 f2 for the MFT, of course, and then the 150 to 400, and then for Leica M's, the 50-1.4 Summilux, and also the 21.4, and the 75. Well, you got a long list there. So let's talk a little bit about the 150 f2. I think that is a very cool lens. I haven't actually handled one myself, and it's one of those 4-third DSLR lens like the 35-100 I just showed you. It's also a very heavy beast, that lens, and it costs a bomb, that thing. And I guess I missed the chance to buy new at the time when Olympus website was having on sale. It was a clearance sale. I was trying to sell it for £1,000, and I didn't buy it. And now, if you look anywhere, anything that looks mint, it will look about £1,500 to £1,600 now. And so I kind of missed the boat in a way. That is a really special lens. 150 is a little bit long, but again, we just talk a little bit about actions and maybe sports and wildlife. The f2 aperture really helps, and like we just discussed, Olympus or OM system doesn't currently have anything faster than 2.8 or faster than f4 actually in the long end. And the 40 to 150 2.8 is the 2.8 is 150's fastest, and this is f2, so even faster. And anything longer than 150, you talk about like 300, 104. All these zoom lenses are maxing out at f4 aperture, f4.5. So none of them are fast in aperture sense. So I think maybe it's time for OM system to maybe launching or considering something slightly faster, and to bring back some of this f2, f2.8 lenses. I think that will be quite cool.
Well, nice as the 300 f4 is, it'd be nicer still if it's the 300 2.8, wouldn't it?
That will be good. I think that will actually make a lot of people start to think, should get into that system.
And it'd be even better if you then use teleconverters, because you've got an extra f-stop to play with.
Yeah. Imagine that 2 times on the 300 2.8 becomes 600 5.6, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah. That's £12,500 worth of anyone's money in full frame camera primes.
How much is that? So how much is a Sigma 600 5.6 that they just announced?
A little under 3, I think. 2.5.
Right, 2.5.
So it's not cheap.
No,
but it's not as expensive as the old 500 f4.
No, that is interesting. And also, one of Tim's favorite is the Summilux 50-1.4. I like that lens. I have that as well, and that was my most used lens actually, and on the Leica M system actually, the 50-1.4, because I kind of like using that for portrait, and more than the 35 on the Leica system. I had the Zeiss as well, and that is something that I quite like for street environmental portrait. But 50 generally is my portrait lens, more than any other longer lenses that I had. Let's see what else here.
Do you like 50mm because you tend to include more of the environment? I guess in your work, the environment is a part of the shot. Is that right?
Yes.
Or you just like, right? Okay.
No. I like to involve the environment a lot. Hence, I just talked about I don't like too much of a separation and between the subject and the background. I like to at least recognize where the person is, at least, and so then I know that for a fact that all the details being captured, all the story can be told through the portrait.
Yeah.
And Matthias here says a Laowa 17-1.8. I haven't heard that lens for a while. People might have forgotten about that particular lens from Laowa. The 17-1.8 is one of the earliest micro four third lenses that Laowa ever made. And I actually didn't mind that lens at all. This is actually much better than the equivalent from TT Artisan and 7 Artisan from other Chinese manufacturers. I think Laowa 17-1.8 is one of those lenses kind of got swept under the radar completely, and no one even think about that lens, because now Laowa is known for the ultra wide lenses, right? All these 6mm, 7.5 and a 10mm, and somehow the 17 just gone. People just forgot about it.
Do you think it's because there already was one? that had autofocus, and it's an own brand lens.
Probably,
So I
probably.
think any manual focus 17 mm f1.8 is going to be a hard sell when Olympus has an AF version OM
Yeah,
system.
it may be the case. I mean, to be quite honest, I mean, it's going against Olympus and Panasonic because they both have similar sort of AF lenses, right? The Panasonic has the 15 no, yeah, 15 millimeters 1.8, the Panasonic Leica, or 1.7, I can't remember. The really lovely tiny metal lens, and the Olympus is the 17 1.8, and it's quite hard for it to compete. But it's a great little lens. If you like menu focus, I think that's a very great option. I think you can get one for cheap now because no one seems to buy it, and it's always on discount. So it's quite a nice metal lens, and if you want some better than TT Artisan and 7 Artisan, I think that's a great option. That's for sure. Let's see. I'm just picking out comments to see now. Oh, Eric talked about the 6 millimeters Laowa. Yes, that is definitely high on my list. Definitely high on my list. I love that lens, and Rod loves that lens too, right? 6 millimeters.
Yeah, I've only got the cine version, which isn't ideal for stills, but if you can get used to not having aperture clicks, it does the same job. It's for me, it's an interesting contrast with the Canon 10 to 20 I reviewed quite recently,
Yeah,
because they're a kind of similar overall quality, but the Laowa lens, apart from being 1/4 of the price
yeah,
and 1/4 of the size, it doesn't use any digital corrections.
yeah,
Now, I don't have anything against digitally corrected lenses, but with the Canon lens, you'll run into trouble if you try and process your raw files in software that doesn't have that profile,
yeah,
because it's not a discretionary correction.
yeah.
Like a lot of modern RF lenses, it has to be corrected. You
Well,
can't
I
just
think
say,
it's not just RF lenses though. I think most modern
yeah,
lenses are
yeah, that's
now.
right, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I
As
mean, it's essentially all mirrorless lenses have some. I mean, OM system lenses are corrected digitally, but the profiles are embedded in the raw files, so you're never any the wiser. It's just that Canon's a special case because it doesn't embed correction in the raw file, so your raw process has nothing to fall back on. If it is an Olympus camera and you're in capture, not Olympus, if you're yes, Olympus, and you're in capture one, and it's a consumer lens and capture one doesn't bother with the profile, you've still
yeah,
got the manufacturer profile embedded in the raw file.
yeah.
but I've got a Canon RF 24 to 50 kit zoom,
Uh-huh.
which absolutely has to have correction. Capture one doesn't bother with a profile for that, so I
Yeah.
can't process the files in capture one.
Right.
They're just unusable.
That's interesting to
So
know.
I don't have anything against digital corrections, but the Laowa lenses are interesting because they don't use any, which is quite reassuring in a way.
Similar to Leica lenses actually, and the Leica lenses do have profile corrections, and but to be quite honest, you don't really need them, and because
Right.
they are actually quite good optically already.
Yeah.
The lens profile tends to just correcting vignetting at the or darker
Yeah.
corners when you shoot wide open, but other than that, is just pretty much as is. The Well, Corey has an interesting nomination here. The Nikon One, the small mirrorless system,
Yeah.
18.5 millimeters 1.8. To be honest, I have no experience with that system. So, Rod, do you know anything about that?
Yeah. I never used the 18.5. The only two lenses I had for that were the 10 to 30, which is like equivalent to a 28 to about 85. And I had the 10 mm 2.8, so that's like a 28 mm 2.8. I knew of the 18.5, and I never got to use it. But those poor old Nikon One system is ahead of its time. Nobody
It was
gave
a little too early, isn't it? It was a little bit too
no,
early.
nobody gave it a chance. You know, the I felt the version one cameras were the best by some margin. Not the best sensors, but the best designs. But anyway, ancient history,
Anyway.
but no, I never tried the 18.5. Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that Corey still has a copy of it, and because they're getting rarer now, I think.
Um, yeah, I imagine they're getting quite hard to find, not because they're desirable, but because they're getting quite old. And I think it's one of those. Well, it's one of those cameras where they either break or people think they're
Yeah,
worth nothing and then don't bother selling them.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
still got my Nikon one J1.
Right.
I think the Nikon one V1 was better, but I didn't get to keep that. So,
Uh,
ah,
Chuck has a very interesting nomination here. It's a Sam Yang 135
mm,
1.8. Well, 135 is
yeah,
actually a very popular portrait focal length for many manufacturers because Canon had a 135 f2, and that was very popular at the time. A very very
that
sharp
used
lens.
that used to be the telephoto lens back in film SLR days, didn't it? A
Yep,
135.
yeah. But now it's like a slightly longer portrait lens.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I have tried this. I mean, I've tried the Canon 135 f2, and that was a spectacular lens, by the way. Very, very sharp. I'm pretty sure even if you adapt to high resolution mirrorless camera nowadays, that lens will still perform. But the Samyang version, in fact, I don't think I have much experience with Samyang lenses, and
No,
I'm not
no,
sure
I
if
haven't.
they are that good. And I'll be interested to know if anyone else uses Samyang lenses. That would be quite good to learn. Maybe another one that I should be testing. So let's quickly here if I see any other interesting lenses that I haven't seen before. Okay, Sigma. Corey says Sigma 56 1.4 on the MFT. Sigma 56
Interesting.
1.4. Is it 51.4, 56? Oh, I know which one now. There's the MFT lens. Yes, yes. That's an interesting one.
Yes, shame the Sigma seems to have lost interest rather in MFT and Tamron. Tamron only
Yeah,
made one lens, I think, for MFT.
Tamron made was it a mirror lens? Did they make the
Uh,
300 f8?
I think I think they made a super zoom as well.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I think there's some 14 to 140 or something like that. I'll have to look it up. I hope I didn't
Ah,
just imagine that, but I think there was one. Yeah,
right.
but I think super zoom or long zoom lenses have gone out of fashion somewhat. I haven't seen many people remarking on them this afternoon. I
Yep.
think what people have figured out is that although they like the idea of having a lens that covers all these focal lengths,
Yep.
when you've got the reality of having one is that you're carrying around this huge great lump of a lens all the time,
Yeah.
which is a drag. And also they tend not to be very good at longer focal lengths.
No.
Um, so you're kind of better off with two lenses, I think. Better off with the standard zoom
And a
and the
prime.
telephoto zoom,
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
or yeah, yeah,
Well, Zach has one thing that I actually want to try. I actually
right.
genuinely want to try is the Voigtlander 29mm f0.8,
Okay,
which is the fastest consumer lens you can buy to date. It's not a cheap lens. I think retail in the UK is £1,500, and but it's one of those things, right? Point 0.8.
what's
You
it?
want to try a
What's
point
it?
0.8.
Was it? Is it an M mount or is
No,
it?
MFT. It's an MFT lens.
Okay, right.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. It's a Micro Four Thirds lens. It's a dedicated Micro Four Thirds lens, so you can't adapt to anything else either.
Right,
So it's a
right.
very specific lens made for the MFT platform, but it has the
Interesting.
fastest production aperture lens that you can get. And I actually really, really want to try it. I don't know whether I should splash out and just trying to get the lens and try it and then sell it again.
Why don't you just? I don't have a PR contact at Voidlander, but just try and find one and ask.
Yeah,
The thing is, I'm not sure they have much of a UK presence. I know they're imported by Robert White,
they're
but
imported
I
by Robert White, and that's all I
but
know.
I
Yeah,
don't know whether there's anyone there who would sort you out a loan. The
no.
alternative is to have a little chat with MPB, see if they can get you one.
I don't think they have any in stock. If they have, then I would
So
know
they're
how
not.
to call. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I don't think they have the 0.8 because it's quite a rare lens. It's an
Yeah.
expensive lens, and I don't
But
think
they
it's
probably didn't make a lot.
no, it's quite a low production lens. So if anyone wants to get hold of one, I think it'd be quite a collector's item actually.
And they might. Well, this is the thing. Once something becomes a collector item, they go into a cupboard and stay there.
Yeah, and
They don't tend to go in general circulation. We'll just see if you can actually buy one.
you can buy
So
one.
what? So they are available as new stock.
Yeah,
There you go. See you next lens.
my next lens. So I have to give up on my Canon 85 1.2 and buy the Voigtlander instead.
Get both. Get both.
I can't have both at the same time. It's too expensive. Especially
Yeah,
Voigtlander
yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah, it's not a cheap lens at all. But it's a 0.8. It's just one of those things. I would like to try 0.8 lens. I mean, I've tried 0.95. That's the fastest I've tried so far.
Those
I've never
Argus
tried
lenses
0.8.
aren't. Those Argus lenses are nice.
They are nice. Yes, they
Yeah,
are nice. Very
yeah.
nice.
But they're not cheap.
The 85. I tried 18.95 and the
Yeah,
25.95 from both Laowa lenses. So they are really really lovely. Especially the
yeah.
18. The 18.95 is quite special, I have to say. Right.
There's a couple of people asking about Samyang on Sony. I can't answer that particularly, but I've got an A7 II and I got the Tamron 20 to 40 f2.8 for that, and that's a pretty fair lens.
Oh, sorry, I've
So
been blowing my nose.
I can't offer any thoughts on Samyang with Sony, but the Tamron I got for my Sony is pretty good
Mm,
because I liked the Sony 20 to 70 for its focal range,
yep.
but then the Tamron is not quite as long, but it's a stop faster and about half the price.
Right.
So I took a punt and I bought one, and I'll tell you optically, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty good.
Mm,
Certainly good enough for what I was expecting.
I see. Zach is interesting though. The I think that this is probably during the time when they're talking about the 17 1.2 from Olympus. He said his favorite is the actual 17 millimeters from Mikaton 0.95. And have you used any Mikaton lenses, Rod?
I haven't. No, no. I tend not to get too many of these kind of Chinese lenses. Lao is the only company I know, and my contact to Lara seems to change every week, so it's all a bit hit and miss.
Right. The
I
Mik
think I might like to try and get the 10 millimeter full frame. That looks interesting.
Oh, the Laowa. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
It's a great
yeah.
lens. It's a great lens, I have to say, and I really like it. But the Metacon is, I would say that their Speedmasters are interesting lenses, where because Mikaton has used their names to represent the aperture range. So the Metacon Speedmasters are usually referring to all the 0.95 lenses. But I would say that their lenses are interesting. Definitely got the character if you shoot it wide open, but they're not necessarily the sharpest lens. I have reviewed a few Metacon lenses. I've tried it. I think I've tried the 17. If I can't remember, if you look at my reviews, you may have find them. But I definitely tried the 35 and the 50.95. I like the 50, and I'm not so sure about the 25 and the 17. I can't remember if I have tested it. Was probably some time ago now. I have tried the cine lenses, though the cine lenses, which is usually the T1. It was okay. I certainly see the old school look. Definitely old school. You're looking at like definitely the 80s and the 90s rendering. So if you like that sort of look, I think it's actually quite good for filming projects if you want. And photography wise, yes. If you really are kind of going for that really old school look. Okay, let's see the last few here. Sigma 56 1.4 is a gorgeous portrait lens. Okay. And okay, right. I guess we have all the lenses being mentioned here. That's fine. Okay. So, any final thoughts, Rod, about why lenses are, are as important as the camera itself?
I think this kind of changes into an argument about what your favorite focal length is as well, doesn't it? But if you're talking about the character of particular lenses,
Yeah,
I think there are some that just seem to gel, and I think perhaps it's because you become so familiar with the lens, you
yeah,
don't have to think about it. You know exactly what it's going to do. You trust it completely. You're not constantly trying to work around its defects. So if I'm shooting with a zoom,
yeah,
it's so much easier if you've got a constant aperture zoom
yeah,
because you're not then constantly adjusting the exposure to
yeah,
allow for the smaller maximum aperture as you zoom in and out. And also with a good quality zoom lens, you're not constantly thinking, I'm not going to go all the way to 150, for example, because it's going to be soft as anything.
yeah,
You need a lens, I think, that performs well in across its entire envelope, in all apertures and all focal lengths. And if you've got one of those, then I think it's a keeper, because too
yeah.
many lenses come with irritations and compromises that kind of put you off. So that if you've got a super zoom, for example, I mean, I've tested a few, and for a while I had a Tamron 18 to 3, no, 16 to 300 on APS-C, which sounds fabulous, doesn't it? But the thing is, once you got past about 150, everything just got softer and softer, and it kind of affects the way you shoot because you're constantly trying to compensate for a lens's shortcomings.
You're
So
trying
I
to
think,
work around the limitations.
yeah, and then you think, oh, I know it gets soft as it gets longer, and you can't remember what that focal length is, and you know it's not particular focal length, and it just puts you off the whole thing. I'm much happier with lenses where I can use all of their apertures and all of the zoom range and not have to think for a moment about whether they're going to go soft or
So,
off the boil in some way.
so that's the technical aspects of it. And what if I say, and we talk a little bit about the look and the feel
Yeah,
of the images that the lenses create,
yeah,
and why is it such an important thing as well? Because nowadays, the people are going a little bit backward, like you said in the conversation earlier, and people are now so fed up with all the clinical sharpness now. Because they're all like consistent look of whichever brand you choose, they all look similar because they're all just sharp. And now they're looking for individuality of from the lenses themselves, and that kind of something that perhaps it's an aesthetic choice or aesthetic preferences, or maybe it's just something that I think they now realize what we've been talking about for a long time is characters of the lens.
so I don't know. I think there may be three groups of users here. So I think for my work photography, it just has to be sharp, clinically correct. Then my Olympus gear is fine, my own system gear is fine because the lenses do that. What
Yeah,
I was saying before, I've got the 12 to 40. I can use it at any focal length at any aperture. It's going to be really, really good.
yeah,
So, but I wouldn't say it necessarily has a lot of character, but it's technically utterly, utterly reliable. And for a certain sort of work, I think that's exactly what you need.
yeah,
If I was shooting for my own satisfaction, oh gosh, I'd have a Leica M10 or M11, knowing that I'm going to miss some shots because I mucked it up, and some I'm going to work out how I hoped. But if you're not doing something for a living, the old failure isn't the end of the world. If you're doing
no,
it for a living, it is the end of the world. So I think in between, there's probably going to be a lot of photographers, and I suspect you're one of them, Jimmy, where you need utter reliability in your lenses, but you
yeah,
also have to have a very characterful look. And getting that kind of reliability and character together,
it's hard.
I'm not sure that's quite so easy.
No, no, and you're quite right there. I mean, this is one very much important reasons why I have chosen the Olympus platform is because of the 1.2 Pro lenses.
Yeah.
Because I when I first got the EM1 Mark II, just the time when I switched from Canon to the Olympus, because they literally just launched that 25 1.2 Pro lens, and after I tried it, and I thought that's the look I was going for, and also because it's a Pro lens, and because of also the OM at the time the EM1 Mark II was really heavily advertising is how rugged it is, how reliable it is. So is their Pro lenses. So I thought that together would be that reliable companion that I could rely on when it comes to professional jobs. And that's what got me into it, is because of that. And that look is that aesthetic that, like you said, is what I was going for, and I wasn't even looking at any other system, because I tried the Panasonic Leica versions, I tried other things, and I don't think anything come close to the look of it. I mean, people can disagree. Is it really just personal thing? But I just prefer that kind of aesthetics when I shoot wide open with the lens. The It's something that certainly reminds me of the good old film days. When I'm looking at some of the more older photographs that I shot with films, it does give me that feeling. So it's just really personal thing. But I agree with what you just said there. And together with the Pro lens, to be honest, the 25 1.2 hasn't failed me once since I got it. Apart from actually, I dropped the lens once and knocked it out of alignment, so I had to send it back to for repair. But it's all come back and good. So yeah, apart from that, it's never failed me once.
No, I did. I guess the bottom line is it's quite difficult to find autofocus lenses with character,
Yeah, it's
because
very
quite
hard these
often
days.
when you're doing this work for a living, let's be honest, you probably do need autofocus, especially
Yes.
when you're dealing with moving and unpredictable subjects. You can't really get around that. So we might all love the idea of shooting with like a rangefinders, but you're just not going to get the shot reliably. And then once you start talking about autofocus lenses, that's when it becomes harder to find lenses that have that look. There are plenty of manual lenses that look amazing,
Yep.
but they're not right for that kind of work.
Yep. I
It's,
mean,
it's
that
difficult.
that is very
Difficult.
true. That is true, and that is actually one of the reasons why I like the new Laowa 10 millimeters. And even though it's quite hard to throw the background out of focus because of the focal length, but you can actually see the Laowa look in it. So, like, from the manual lenses. So that
Yes.
to me is quite interesting. So if Laowa does decide to release more autofocus lenses in other focal length, whether going to be MFT or full frame, whatever, and I will be looking forward to those lenses just to see how they perform and in the aesthetic side of it.
So you're talking about the Laowa 10mm full frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. This to me is the most amazing thing. People, I mean, I've got the, where is it? It's in my drawer somewhere. I won't bother fetching it out. But I've got the Laowa 10mm MFT, and that's wide.
Yeah.
And then when you think that this is 10mm full frame, that is seriously wide. Quite tricky to shoot with, but you tell
Yeah.
me that it's quite good.
It is good. I mean, I
Yeah.
personally think it's good. There isn't any. Don't forget that this is 0D, so this is optically
Yeah.
corrected,
Yeah.
not relying on any lens profile. So that's the amazing side of it. So even if you shoot raw video, that means you don't need to correct it that much. It's all kind of nice and
Well,
straight.
that's an issue, isn't it? If you shoot with a Canon RF camera, you shoot video, and you decide you're going to shoot raw,
Yeah,
how's
trouble.
that going to work? Because Canon doesn't have a video editor. How are you going to correct those lenses
You can you
in
can
in in
you can correct. You can correct,
yeah,
but it's hard. And
the
then you start losing
the
pixels.
the correction needed for Canon's, well, I can only speak for the 24 to 50 and the 24 to 105 STM lenses. The correction needed, it's not just a tweak, it is major correction, and it's also geometrically quite complex. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you get one of these lenses, go and shoot some raw video and then try and edit it, and I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm not sure how straight you're going to be able to get it. Capture One doesn't have enough distortion correction to fully straighten those pictures.
No,
That's how
no.
that's how bendy they are. but
Well,
anyway, that aside, I think the lower lenses are definitely very interesting.
yep,
Having said that, I've got a 9mm f2.80D for APS-C.
yep.
That is straight as a die, but the corners are about 2 stops darker than the middle. So so they didn't fix everything.
You can't have everything, Rod.
No, I know.
But then
But
again, I'd rather have it straight than having dark corners.
yeah, because distortion correction is it's not just simple curvature. You get some very difficult kind of whisker distortion that
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to have
yeah,
an exactly calibrated profile to get it properly straight.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, certainly for video, I think properly corrected lenses are still quite important.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Otherwise you just have to you just can't shoot raw. You can't
well,
film
that's
in raw.
that's why that's why cine lenses are so expensive, because they are all optical corrected lenses. You know, straight is straight. There's no breathing. There's nothing. You know, that it's all just made to perform. You know, to the highest level. And if you
Yeah.
get, you know, cine lenses from China, the lower end ones, is definitely not really proper cine lenses. To be honest, they just basically put a photography lens and then put some gear rings on it, and they call it a cine lens.
So do you think with focus breathing this has crept into lens design, or do you think people have just become aware of it and it's always been there?
It's always been there, and it's just now being made aware, just simply because we shoot more videos these days,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
especially now, uh,
You're
more and
doing a
more
lot more focus
consumers,
pulls.
yeah, and people are looking for shallow depth of field
Yeah,
transitions a lot, and because
yeah,
of that, you know, it's becoming more obvious when you're trying to rack focus
right.
from one end to the other. You know,
Yeah,
if you're using a longer tele lens or longer prime lenses, when you have this ultra shallow depth of field, when you just rack from the closest to the infinity, that's when you see the focus
yeah,
breathing.
right.
And if you look at cinematography wise, you look at a lot of the high end cine lenses, there's no issues about breathing. You know, everything just nice and smooth,
Right.
straight point to point. And but in lower end consumer lenses, you tend to find a lot of breathing. And this is by design, of course, and it's a lot harder to control. Hence, you know, the size of the cine lenses are usually a lot bigger as well, because of that reasons there.
I guess fashions have changed in filmmaking too, because not so long ago, films were made almost like you were filming a stage set with very limited camera movements to follow subjects. Whereas today, there's much more of a fashion for kind of documentary style, isn't there?
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
guess you're going to see more things like you're going to see more rolling shutter, you're going to see more focus breathing purely because of a more modern style of filming.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and this is why a lot of people are. I mean, a lot of the Hollywood directors are still, or actually, are going back to films and shooting films, only because they can get away with a lot of the digital
Right,
artifacts that we see these days.
right.
Like you said, rolling
Mm,
shutter is one major thing that
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
cinematographer does hate. You know, seeing rolling shutter where they do fast panning. That won't happen in films, and so that's the thing that they need to make sure that you know, that is presentable. So I guess there are still things that digitally needs to catch up, and at the moment, especially with larger sensors, and they need faster readout, faster sensors, faster processor to be able to make sure that those phenomenons are don't exist in the videos. And also
yeah,
optically, you know, lenses are critical. You need to definitely have the need the lenses to perform, making sure that all the elements that we just talked about, breathing, sharpness, and everything, specular highlights, and especially, you know, because these days people tend to like to use that in filming, are not having any chromatic aberrations, and you know, and things like that. It's just really horrible.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is why cine lenses are so expensive in the first place. You know, if you're looking for the cheapest one, the proper ones are at least 4, 5, 6 grand. You know, the cheaper one, the higher end one, you're talking about 20, 30,000 pounds each. They're not cheap.
But I guess when you're hiring A-list talent and a crew of 100, then the cost of a lens is the least of it.
Yeah. Oh, of course, of course, of course. Well, this is why there are a lot of cheaper solutions and options out there nowadays,
Yeah,
and they aren't that bad, and you just have to be a
yeah,
little bit more careful when you shoot with it. Just make sure that
correct.
you know the limitations, and you just have to work to that limit and not over it. Anyway, so this is good and good chat today. I think that we're going to wrap up now, and so next week, next week going to be interesting. So I'm not going to say what it is now, and so we're certainly going to have to stay tuned because next week we're going to interview someone. And yeah. So I'm gonna be very excited to bring him along, and you guys should join us because it's all about MFT and the future of MFT. So stay tuned for that.
Okay.
So until next time, I guess we're gonna say goodbye, and I will speak to you all very very soon. Thanks a lot, Rod.